Locks at 708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning, John Cass, johncassnews.com, where you get John's commentary on the passing scene, the Chicago Way podcasts, and
Free.
$50
a year for everything, and column just made Real Clear Politics, so it's gone national again. It's called, they call it Democrat Scandals Keep Growing. But I tend to think it's two scandals. One, that the American people are embracing subjugation by not being in the streets right now. And the second is, of course, Democrats would do as they do.
We can talk about that in part here, but certainly will with Michael Goodwin a little bit later in the hour. Our next guest has penned an interesting piece over at the American Conservative. Don't blame Trump if he gives up on Russia, Ukraine. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen if he gives up on Russia and Ukraine. All of those Ukrainian freedom fighters in suits inside the Beltway are going to say that, he was in service of Putin once again. He's Russian collusion hoax redux. I'm sure will be the response if peace is not achieved, and if it is, then it'll be it was mostly because we set him up to close the deal. There is no shame inside the Beltway. We know this. But what is possible? What is the real state of affairs, at least, or the perceived state of affairs? I guess no one other than the principals can actually know. Is Trump and Rubio and the team, Witkoff, doing everything they can to try to negotiate an effective cessation of hostilities? Is there anything more that can be done? We talked to Cliff May, Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, the other day, and he suggests that a more aggressive posture is needed from the Trump administration in terms of sending more armaments to Ukraine to let Putin know that we are not going to roll over and allow you to slow walk us while you stay poised for your opportunity to storm Kyiv. That's what he said, but there are obviously a lot of viewpoints on this. Let's get Daniel DePetris. He's a fellow at Defense Priorities and a syndicated foreign affairs columnist at the Chicago Tribune. The Chicago Tribune.
I remember that place.
Yeah. Daniel DePetris, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan.
Morning. Thank you, gentlemen.
So don't blame Trump if he gives up. It sort of indicates, and your piece does as well, that even if he overestimated his powers of persuasion, he has put the effort forward, and his team have, to try to get to a cessation of hostilities and something that could endure. And at some point, there's only so much you can do, as he has so indicated.
Yeah, look, I mean, President Trump, obviously, during his campaign, one of his actually standing ovation lines was he was going to end the war in Ukraine very, very quickly. And, we could debate whether that was a realistic objective to begin with. But I think his objective was sincere, regardless of the whole I'll end it in 24 hours shtick, which I don't think anybody took seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, I don't think Trump didn't take that seriously either, even if he said it. Anyway, his objective was to stop the killing quickly and try to get, Putin, Zelensky, or at least their representatives, into a room to hash out a mutually agreeable compromise, right, to end the war. And to his credit, he's done that over the last 3 months. The problem, of course, is the irreconcilable positions between the two men. And regardless of how good of a mediator you are, if the combatants aren't willing to wheel and deal, then there's very little a mediator can do. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Dan, thanks so much for mentioning the fact that there are two combatants in in this business. I'm concerned that Ukraine has not owned up to the fact that they're part of this too. They're just not victims. They can end it too, and they don't.
Right, and the it's very difficult for us to, from the outside, to kind of critique the diplomats in the room and say, they should be doing this and this and this. But in this case, President Zelensky has been very, let's say, adamant that negotiations with Putin have been or would be kind of a fool's errand, right? That's basically been his line since the very beginning of the war. The only reason he's cooperating now, I would argue, is because Trump kind of embarrassed him in the Oval Office and laid down a red line saying, you better cooperate with us or else you're not going to get any more U.S. military support. And that worked. That worked to push him into the negotiations. The problem now, of course, is Putin. He's just got a very maximalist interpretation of what a deal should look like. So Zelensky used to be the hindrance to negotiations. Now I think Putin is probably the bigger hindrance.
Something you said at the beginning struck me, and I don't know why it hasn't struck me before, but you're right. And when you say that Trump continues to emphasize he wants to stop the killing, and he talks in some detail about it, how tragic it is, the hundreds of thousands of dead on both sides. And I just want to end the killing, which is a very humanitarian perspective. But it also it seems to me, maybe could be a bit of a geopolitical cudgel in the direction of Putin. And maybe it has been used. I mean, obviously I don't know all that has been said behind closed doors. But in the sense of saying, hey, Vlad, just understand something. I may not be inclined to send weapons to Ukraine right now because I'm trying to stop the killing. But just remember, I'm intent on stopping the killing. So that doesn't mean that I'm just going to leave and allow you to then take your sights, set your sights on Kyiv, because I know that would mean more killing. And I'm for stopping the killing. So I got a mineral deal with Ukraine, and I'm for stopping the killing. Just remember that as you, play out your hand in terms of what you think you're entitled to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's very hard for me, at least, to kind of figure out what Trump's plan B is going to be if these talks kind of fall apart. Which, quite frankly, they look like they're on their last legs. Trump's got a couple options. He could do what Clifford May suggested, which is essentially redouble U.S. military support to the Ukrainian army and hope that this pushes Putin to cooperate sincerely. I would argue that's probably a stupid way to go, only because we've kind of gone that way before over the last 3 years. And yes. Putin has demonstrated that when he's pushed up against a wall, he doesn't back down. He redoubles his aggression.
What economic leverage does Trump have on Putin right now?
Well, yeah, he has very little. He's got very little. The Europeans have quite a lot. The United States, though, we don't really trade all that much with Russia. We don't really buy Russian oil. The Europeans are still buying liquefied natural gas from the Russians at pretty significant volumes, right? So we've got this strange situation where, the European leaders are standing up and saying, we're going to do everything for Ukraine to make sure its sovereignty is defended. But then they're sending, billions of dollars into the state coffers in the Kremlin to buy gas.
Well, that's why Trump indicated. I mean, the reporting was that he basically told members of the EU, hey, look, you better change your approach because, what we're getting from Putin is he thinks he's winning. And so he doesn't need to give in at all. As you said, the maximalist strategy that he's approaching. So it's maybe right. It's not us. It's not our problem. It's your problem because you're underwriting him.
Yeah, I think all along Trump did not want to get involved. He thought this war, U.S. involvement in the war, was dumb. He thought it was a horrible thing for the United States to do. He's talked about this repeatedly, that, this is at its core a European problem that needs a European solution.
MAGA base doesn't want anything to do with it. Yeah.
No, he doesn't. And I think, if I were a betting man, I would put my money on, he just walks away from the entire enterprise and leaves it Europe to handle on their own. And I would argue that's probably a more morally just way of doing it than trying to shove a peace deal down the throats of the Ukrainians that they probably wouldn't implement anyway. So tough decisions ahead, and obviously Trump does not want to throw the towel in on this diplomacy yet. But I think in the next few weeks there may come a time where he just gets impatient and says, "The hell with it, I'm walking away."
Maybe he could get Vlad Putin to come to the Oval Office and show him a screening of Red Dawn and say, this is what's going to it's Ramaphosa style. You dim the lights, show him Red Dawn, and then you connect the dots. Maybe something like that will work.
What did you think of that episode at the White House yesterday?
What did I make of it? Every time I watch a Trump presser, there's got to be something entertaining with it. I had no idea he was going to turn the Oval Office into like a de facto, movie studio.
Right.
As far as the whole white genocide thing, I'm not up to tune in what is really happening in South Africa, but none of what Trump does now, it kind of surprises me. I think it's surprising to be unsurprised at this point. Trump is going to do what he wants to do. He treats television as if it's half the job. So
I think
I don't know why people are shocked about.
No, I think he surprised Ramaphosa. I'll tell you that. Daniel DePetris, fellow at Defense Priorities and syndicated foreign affairs columnist for the Chicago Tribune. Dan DePetris, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care. And he joined us on the turnkey.provincial line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer. Gain insight into building strong marriages and raising godly children with Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. Each weekday at 11:30 a.m. on our sister station, AM 1160. Hope for your life.
You've worked hard and accumulated wealth, but you know the pitfalls involved in passing significant assets to your heirs. The team at Spahn Financial will help you feel secure with personalized